Seems a bit close, don't you think?
That'll be fine. It's good to pick up the audio. Okay, I have a speech drop.
Okay.
It's going to be lowercase n, capital B, lowercase z, k, lowercase, and then capital H and lowercase s.
The third letter is a lowercase, yeah. Any changes?
There are no changes. I sent you the full thing.
Thank you.
There were new cards, I just sent them anyway. Okay. Okay. Is anybody not ready?
Give me 1 second, and ready when you are.
Okay. Sound
Yeah, I'm good.
Contention 1, integration. American boxing around UCLOS is coming home to roost. 1, extended continental shelf claims. Arctic governance is in free fall post-Ukraine, but the legitimacy of UCLOS is lacking absent U.S. commitments, unilateralism around extended continental shelf claims incentivize Russian exit from the treaty. Dodge 25. Before the invasion and military dispute in the Arctic, states engaging well-established frameworks such as UCLOS in 2010, Norway, and Russia final delimitation have to wait until the convention makes recommendations to Canada and Greenland. Then all parties have to negotiate despite Russia's formal commitment. Area of concern after invasion. In March 2024, Russia representative to the ISA announced Moscow would not recognize U.S. declaration of extended continental shelf as non-party. Russia argued U.S. could not pick and choose decision, reject U.S.'s position when calls within Russia for Moscow to abandon UCLOS, while Russia argued urged the U.S. to adopt UCLOS so longer than Washington fails to formally ratify the more Moscow permit going to U.S. double standards. The precedent of benefits without drawbacks from the U.S.'s outside approach is dangerous because it justifies internal Russian appeal to, quote, get rid of unnecessary limitations. Paragraph 24. Russia's remarkable in the statement. Russia urges U.S. to ratify UCLOS and voices from inside Russia to withdraw from UCLOS from the State Duma and Defense Ministry believe would help Russia strengthen grip on the Arctic, get rid of unnecessary limitations, contrary reporting, use deliberately selective approach exploited as justification for denunciation in future. Withdrawal immediately causes Black Sea conflict and ensures otherwise minor disputes escalates. Minus 24. Most immediate implications of Russia's withdrawal could be uncertainty for Azov and Black Sea borders, Bulgaria, Georgia, Romania, Russia, Turkey, and Ukraine. If Russia announced UCLOS no longer bound by dispute mechanisms, complicate resolution of disputes, threat of withdrawal, part of Russian narrative executive in power into tip towards multipolarity as equal power. Black Sea probing triggers Article 5 in World War III, College Bonsu, and Boys 24. Will Putin test NATO in the Black Sea? Speak of 3 to 10 years. German exercise for attack as early as 2025. Violated Romanian territory. Iranian drones found force down an American Reaper. These incidents are continuing. If any becomes serious enough to take to NATO, would face question of whether to respond. Maybe a matter of time for something more serious. Risk World War III. Russia determined to take the northern Black Sea may test NATO in one false swoop. U.S. strategy needs grounded on understanding the BSR is vulnerable and critical. 2 is Southeast Asia. Chinese leadership view the treaty as a series of bargains in exchange for benefits. Further unilateralism flips this calculus and causes Chinese exit. Valencia 19. China considers the Western interpretation of UCLOS as benefiting West to its disadvantage. China views as a package deal with bargains in exchange for mining. Washington now picking and choosing interpretations that favor it to detriment of China's security. Lead China to reevaluate remaining of the party would create fear instability in the region. China free to interpret in its favor as the U.S. does now would weaken dispute settlement, push into being with many fear most a rogue country that engages in coercion. The growing security threats of disagreements may eventually lead China to consider costs of withdrawing less than benefits. That makes SCS4 inevitable. Zero's possibility of peaceful solution by completely destroying any semblance of local trust. That 16. China shouldn't denounce UCLOS withdrawal would undermine belief in China's peaceful rise, establishes expectations of how states should behave, essentially the escalate. Denouncing UCLOS could irretrievably damage the trust of states in the region, would derail a negotiated solution of the disputes, will harm its standing. This is particularly devastating as tensions forever in the South China Sea, Eastwood 422. SCS war would mean World War III, accident in air collision crash between a ship, both sides blame the other. Trump articulated Americans going to be more lethal to have all the toys China have all the toys any nation could want China overconfident instabilities. SCS war escalates, craft 24. China's nuclear forces being modernized to threaten U.S. targets could be used against the Philippines, increase its confidence in intensifying conventional conflicts. An unforeseen incident in the South China Sea can escalate very quickly with a high level of tension. Have not dismissed the threat of WMDs. Goes nuclear, Blair 18. The real dangerous escalation would be when Chinese attempt to capture a disputed island in the SCS was failing. A failed attack would undermine the legitimacy of the CCP, could make Beijing desperate to threaten use of nuclear weapons. The tension in this riddle is magnified by recent behavior. Subpoint A, South China Sea, Indo-Pacific Defense Forum 25. Philippines, the U.S. conduct joint patrol of the SCS region for arbitral disputes, underscore freedom of navigation in your dispute. Subpoint B, Taiwan, Maritime Executive 25. Trump conducted a freedom of navigation exercise through the Taiwan Strait. China reacted angrily. U.S. actions at the wrong signal, increases security risk. PLA noted forces are on constant high alert. The plan solves reliance on FONUP to return to independent escalation scenario, 5 and 24. Non-membership inhibits ability to cooperate, cannot cooperate with framework, it's only responsive phone up, leverage, leaves allies uneasy, C, membership as a liability, more likely to disrupt, regional stability, ratification would lend legitimacy and credibility to the commitment to peaceful, non-escalatory, non-provocative, competition in the SDS, phone up, so deteriorates to other avenues, send confusing signals to allies and adversaries alike, place disputing vessels in close proximity, increasing for accidents coupled with escalation become catastrophic. 3. Seabed mining. Trump has covertly been working with mining companies to circumvent the ISA, setting up a crash between interests on the initial stage, Shaw 25. Trump is considering executive orders for mining in Pacific without approval of the ISA. The metals company is working with Trump to bypass international approval. Union laid out jurisdiction. The ISA is not authorized. Mining US is not signed on, though typically followed, but now can circumvent international law as if the treaty wasn't out there, setting up a crash between interests. This generated enormous unified backlash and is a 180 on previous tacit acceptance of the UNCLOS 3 framework. America helped to write, Lipton 25. 40 nations voice opposition of mining economy to team up with Trump to circumvent international law. China, Russia, India, the US, New Zealand, the UK, New Zealand, Indonesia, France directly undermine principles of multilateralism and threaten the global efforts to share wealth from minerals. UNCLOS established ISA, granted it power, ratified by 165 nations. One exception is the US. Negotiated change in the 1990s. State Department Set Representatives, creating pressure the US intends to honor treaty. Even nations more supportive of moving to mine join to object. That caused catastrophic biodiversity loss, great power war. Catalan 25. After dominating big conflict, the U.S. initiated DSM despite failure to ratify UNCLOS. This angers China and Russia, which increases efforts to secure to control of the industry. Rising conflicts lead to violent interactions with sufficient environment and minerals, typically without cooperation. ISA never ensure compliance with behavior and monitoring environmental impacts to serve larger organisms and create ripple effects. Only the ocean ability to regulate climate regulation and species conditions cause disruptions to food chains. Plan the United States ought to become party to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. That card was marked at food chains.
Food chains, right?
Yeah, the very last paragraph was the only part not read.
Sorry.
What'd you say?
I'm just getting my phone because I have time. Alright, good?
Yeah.
In the advantage copper, there are no cards skipped, right?
Nope.
Cool. The first advantage made claims about American hypocrisy. American hypocrisy has existed for decades through multiple different presidents. However, the single act of joining UNCLOS reverses all of that.
So hypocrisy in context of UNCLOS actually hasn't existed under multiple presidents. Our evidence outlines that we complied with almost everything in the treaty until the Biden administration decided to unilaterally expand our extended continental shelf, and the Trump administration has begun to illegally attempt to authorize deep sea mining, demonstrated by the executive order last Thursday. We've made claims about why those issues are specific. Our argument, while hypocrisy in some minor form.
What card talks about the Trump executive order? No card is from after that happened.
Well, I mean, we have cards saying it would be bad if it happened, and it factually did happen. Like, if you really want to make it about this, like, come on, dude. Like, we have evidence that says that executive order would be bad. That factually did pass on Thursday. Like,
sure, the Black Sea card, or It talks about how Russia has already been testing in the region and has already escalated with their military in the region. Why has it not led to a nuclear war?
So Russia has not been testing the area. Russia has not done any large-scale things. The evidence indicates that what has been happening is there was a drone that was found there, but that's not necessarily indicative of broader conflict. Secondly, we think that Russia's presence within UNCLOS and the territorial dispute resolution process is sort of a constraint on that will erode quickly. Our argument is that military provocation increases in the absence of the organization's ability to constrain it.
Wait, all of UNCLOS is codified into CIO. You just said that. Why does that not check Russia?
Why does that not check Russia? Because the dispute settlement mechanism is not in CIL. That is something uniquely part of the treaty. Like, the articles that are about, like, free passage and submarines and whatnot are all CIL, but the dispute resolution process is uniquely part of UNCLOS.
Yeah, sure. Davenport, this is SCS?
Sorry, what was that?
The Davenport evidence, Davenport 16, says, quote, the non-ratification of UNCLOS by the United States is tolerated because the U.S. is perceived as faithfully compliant with the UNCLOS.
Correct.
Then why does that seem hypocritical to China? Why does that,
okay.
look at it
that card is from 2016, you read an unhighlighted portion. We have 2025 evidence that has contextualized this to recent instances of hypocrisy. We've read evidence that the mining issue is specifically contentious because China is willing to take drawbacks from UNCLOS because they believe it's necessary for mining. We've said that Trump's executive order destroys that. our argument is also that phone-ups independently mess with that. So even if we were compiling the past, that is distinct from the actions of the past two administrations. We have like a lot of evidence from this year and last year that make this pretty clear.
Sure. The last contention, seabed, or scenario, seabed mining. What this entire evidence is about seabed mining broadly. Where does it make a claim that
It says that if the U.S. were to unilaterally initiate it, that it would enrage Russia and China and it would cause an arms race in the area. It'll be constrained by ISA if we follow it.
Sure. Let me send it. 6.
Oh, so it could be a little louder. Maybe we can move this a little bit. Yeah, like that. That would be good.
Okay.
It's 6 off, you said?
6.
Okay.
Let me just send it. Just trying to get this out.
It doesn't go any higher.
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay.
I'm gonna time it laterally.
Okay.
Actually, I don't know why I did that. I did that for the one. For the money or for you, I guess. Sorry, I haven't sent it yet. I'm just talking.
Fair enough. Appreciate the honesty.
Yeah, I sent it. By the way.
Okay.
I thought on speech drop. Yeah.
Oh, on speech drop. I forgot
You
where you
set that up.
I did set that up. Let me just get this up. Sorry. It was 6.
6 and then case.
6 and then case. Okay, I'm gonna make it what's that? Okay, I'm good. He's good.
Alright. Good?
Yep.
Cool. A new bipartisan group is pushing the SAMOSA Act now. Tech group support it. Alms 326. Connolly felt that the lady Mason introduced the SAMOSA now new LATOG has taken an interest in finding an example of the virtual cooperation of Microsoft Moses and the Democracy Coalition Association Alliance, ratifying UNCLOS classes bipartisanship and trades off with legislative priorities. Link alone terms case. Patrick 14. Senate Graveyard Street 2 3 reinforced the legislative and NDC Senate Secretary opportunity because requiring numbers to go government for the legislative priorities for requiring legal flow and treaties, especially hard some associated with business or since behind November 4 for alcohol, our legislative treaties and August and this and also ministry of treaties of conspiracies. SAMOSA builds cyber resiliency, modernizes defense technology. Bracken 24. Reading out wasteful and trouble just kind of governments and comments as well as some security mandates governing operations like well, and the decreasing of rate of good governance and from given application results in climate government, taking out from the Senate. Cyber attacks go nuclear. Claire 19. Escalation of custody cyber attacks, cyber and no code 11. The level of safety system power grid cyber tradition editing and attack material to conflict. And now is key dual. 25 cyber attacks for the such rising of the attacks and 92 transportation rising national security concern and 2025 become more sophisticated. Next one. UNCLOS is a project to global oceans privatization, but I tell you, such a key effect on regulation privatization, we will concept of concept of things, but orders from the disaster over accession, but in analysis or data. Capitalism is systemically unsustainable extinction, Driver from B. Driver has possibility research extension, and research extension, and the extension cannot change, research and train, and research and research and because that's not setting global rules and extend and taking nation of this medical back and all that work in the capitalism. The alternative is a Workers International, is popular, foster. 20. Research research women who knows and master partner with medical organization, strong business social political capital revolution. Use philosophical competition if you win a link, they don't get a perm. Because they set up for others, rates and terms of the ideologies, and alternatives are always not unique. Next one. Counterplan the United States your condition, becoming a party to UNCLOS on the acceptance of a new implementing agreement that alters the collective understanding of Article 19 of parity maritime espionage that causes physical harms or impacts that competes and sells in the implementing agreement conditions, generally while modifying Article 19 to otherwise prevent maritime intelligence gathering. Hutchins, U.S. espionage over regarding an element of agreement prices for the organization of the amendment, if I'm to Russia trying to get not just getting a relation, you have to allow with the descent revelation, even foundation and Israel, and the such and ability to take use of the agreement, also that the English condition has harms or impacts matter. Maritime intelligence diffuses converging crisis, extinction, Albiano. 24. Maritime intelligence of national security, security, military, cultural balance, and various competition for spring up, national security, military, 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 for the estate, agriculture, meets on around, but any responsibility, and total control, CS, readiness, legal fishing, and health, and all mega adults, and necessary financial, stable future, complete from party cross consent to be banned. You intend you can party single sympathy relation consent to be banned, and that prohibits reservation or exception, options, and also prohibits long term with auto the United States reservation exemptions. Next up. The United States should expand homelands for the purpose of avoiding war with China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and all relevant actors substantially increase its military presence and capabilities in the Arctic and South China Sea and induce regional allies to do the same without the covert policy to not use nuclear weapons in the SCS or Arctic, launch a preemptive first strike against the People's Republic of China and Russian Federation to eliminate military capabilities, increase deployment of bioremediation, to solve biodiversity, thus ban escalatory photos, think one solves miscalculation by increasing trust and communication. Story 18. Holland said between the way with different calculation and different close to the United States workers between the Holland and President Social Conference Metal Insurance, the negotiation trust and planes through the resolves ICS and Arctic conflict through deterrence and communication following the war. And the SCS is presenting China aggression invaded towards China, military program training SCS, and some of the SCS and plane 4 eliminates adversary capabilities, DASD-20. Contemplation for WME, utilization targets of the less protected, let's use more than one because probably it's actually used different delivery platforms. And it would be our response to China war, solves and isolation and concerns case plus China. China's the world Venezuela level launch on attack on the active president people say China the first time to look for the world finance from the English numbers and playing class cells body Chandra transmission also is just coming up with a little bit mediation it took like 9 minutes to from the material so let's go from an entry to the public and xenobiotics and thanks to also on a phone suspension of bank them no recent plan is key legislation. Sorry, I set my timer for 6 instead of 7, so I should have 305. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have 305, so I'm saying that time continues. Next up, interpretation of the affirmative assessing how they can party self-assessment CUND. Consider party assessment application except for approval violation they don't lack a specification. Human ownership is like source common competition dealings and more shall less to maintain relations from both sides. Interpret is conceived when you see definitions or definitions to become parties for the use of nuke itself to pro party turns case. And close also proves their that interpretation they can be the interest reasonabilities arching characteristics of bomb yes and the purpose of use. Next up. Compounding United States Supreme Court to reverse counter litigation, which within the past 12 months ruled against oil and gas companies. Trump is making market thrive. North Trump, Trump will coalition energy powers on next interpretation on research resource and court rulings and Trump sought labor litigation. But court should pass over rulings and also ambitions are based on activists which are last and south the way and spikes litigation grows tall. No social use losses that based on the service or other side of mission to litigation lawsuit against China. Transfer case of state litigants and new ruling means compliance bans. It's really Trump. 24. Pay 24 million listeners to our company. Probably the state to go measure prevent all the city don't judge to do and profits and NFL. Those ones ready to higher benefit for the mitigation mission activity covered by the actors and all that's for self-get our war. The 24 channel for find project and also the after the life and trying to keep running on the cushion. There's the game trying to grab the operation. As if you didn't have security for national lines of dictators. Case. No material effect of Russia leaving Cooper and Shifar Trump. After the simple and the Russia, as there's no logo, so the cost effect and all obligations state Russia rates of material effect of move it. And when I see Torson agrees that leaving would have no material impacts in CIL checks, this big resolution fails. Damn it. 14. You know, the less of these military super concern. No support of the plus military transition of the effects and see at the table relevant controls. Hello, so the table can do the US and also the change of China will come into the SCS session of an impact on nations. And when I see Salinas' neg evidence is that it benefits more from the treaty, and that if it does, it's unstoppable for military-driven reasons, grinning total democracy. Adam, 25 and Russia has no power in boxing. You couldn't escalate conventionally. Dixon sent 21. Russia into what you're from Crimea. There was 22. Second, Moscow, the vision of Black City. And you can say the Black City. Russian actor, Russian leaders, to have Black City, related to such a bad people, so to extreme measure, nuclear weapons, was found to be, and the country, telling the flying summit, and guns to Crimea. And when I say impact is having tentative the best agrees back, the Black City was hypothetical. China won't denounce. I insist in something across the representation. Trying to see the wrong trade. And then going to go straight to China and join the nation. Goes further. When I say Valencia agrees there will be a serious cost for China to leave, and when I see Davenport agrees that it's even worse than we say that China won't leave because it damages international shipping, and the US isn't perceived as hypocritical because we back to CIL escalation is a feasible though. Traffic is 20 SCS and says well, we got back to the meals for the litigation and the escalation beyond all relations to those dispute. And so the calculations in this shape, from the initial trying to reduce the something that they leave internal safe phone option maintain gross top, and on against our technicals, I mean navigation version, maybe just a navigation session, system failure of the factor manipulation. And Cato does not take repower war once invested against those global unrest, which is certainly not successful evidence of a backlash to a single company deciding to try 9, see by no internal link. And Sir Harker also just forgot to read evidence that some Trump actually went through, even if it's true they did not meet cards that substantiates it. No Biden impact being 20. That is allowing the government data means which is the reasonable confidence and estimation distinguished reference previously my population people 4% reverse strategy populations. My timer went after because I don't think he paused when I switched the timer. So
okay.
Does he get that card?
Well, because like I had to turn my timer, so I paused my timer because I wasn't speaking.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the card was called extreme trends reflect transient populations.
Okay. Are you good for CX?
Yeah.
I want to start with your criticism. I guess, what is philosophical competition?
Yeah, the philosophical competition, this argument is just that if we win a lake, i.e. we explain what enclosely is an expansion of capitalism, you should not get a permutation.
Why is it close to expansion of capitalism?
Well, yeah, sure. That's the benign evidence. We've made a few claims for, well, it makes two mostly important, like two major claims. First is that Nicholas would establish EUCs, these are economic exclusivity zones that are functionally nationwide private property. We've made a claim that this is an expansion of the private property and territorializes the sea and destroys the global commons. That's the first part of the card. The second part of the card makes the claim that the ICA promotes extraction of the seabed. We've made a claim that even though, you're gonna get up, you might get up and say like, oh, the ICA's restrictions are about the environment. The problem is that the issue is that despite multiple environmental lawsuits encouraging the ICA to do this, the ICA has ruled against every environmental lawsuit ever done. They've never gone in support of the environment.
Wait. Didn't you read a DA about environmental lawsuits? No? Isn't that the oil DA?
Well, no, this ISA argument is about how the ISA has never constricted.
ISA has never allowed a climate lawsuit. Is that not?
This is about other.
Isn't your link to oil about climate lawsuits?
No, that's not about ISA, but that's
Wait,
about dispute resolution forms. They can sue the U.S. in the dispute resolution form.
Okay.
The ISA is the body that's supposed to govern seabed extraction, and it just says that they're lax about enforcing these things in other countries now.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about something else.
Sure.
I guess I want to ask a little bit about China We're Good, or
sure.
whatever you want to call that.
Fair enough.
How does it solve?
We've made a claim that being able, by first striking Russia and China, we would eliminate their nuclear capabilities, which means that there cannot be a war.
Where does that say that works?
That's the first card. Eliminates adversarial capabilities. The second card, the flash evidence, also makes the claim that we would be able to.
From the Secretary of Defense's office, what is this?
Yeah, I think.
Where does this mention Russia or China?
No,
Where does it say we can like Russia has the same amount of nukes as us? Or maybe they have a little bit more. Like, why does that mean that we're able to counter?
This card is making a broad claim that says targeted plans to destroy military capabilities are sufficient. It destroys WM research. The second card, the flash evidence, is specifically in the context of China. It says that their systems are vulnerable and that we would be able to eliminate them in just I think it was I forgot there was a specific time. It was
Alright.
2 weeks or something.
Okay.
2 hours. We could overwhelm all of the nuclear weapons in 2 hours flat because they do not have a military nuclear capability that can reach the US. They just don't have one.
I want to talk a little bit about just this oil that. Can you just walk me through the new ruling link, the ILOS link?
This is the Chaudhry evidence, you right?
Chaudhry evidence?
Oh wait, actually I have a more important question. What's the status of the off?
They are conditional.
Cool. Can you kick planks?
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
I'm going to take some prep. I have 5 minutes.
Yeah, we're doing 5, right? Yeah.
I'm going to start that right now. Did you read Greenland killed the Bars?
Yeah. Cool. Do you want me to send marked off?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to stop right there. I have 328. Or actually, you know what? I'm going to keep taking it. Sorry. Stop prep. I've got 317. Sent. Okay. It's on speech throw up. Okay. Does everybody have it?
Yeah, I'm gonna need the order, so I'm gonna
Okay.
reconcile that.
So that sounds good. So the order on the dock is wrong. We're gonna do spec. So spec become party, and we're gonna
This
do.
is before the case.
Oh, sorry. We're gonna do the case top down. And we're gonna do spec become party, the criticism, and then the contention counterplan, the espionage counterplan.
Sorry. After I.
Okay.
Yeah. Spec,
Spec.
spec K.
Criticism,
Yeah.
the multi-plane counterplan,
The advantage.
yeah, the espionage counterplan, the SAMOSA dissent, and the oil dissent.
Espionage counterplan. SAMOSA DA. And then the oil DA.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just gonna make sure I'm on this right. Spec, I'm gonna go on. Spec, critique, espionage counterplan, advantage counterplan, SAMOSA DA, oil DA.
Yeah. That's what we're gonna do.
Yes, material impact to Russia leaving, even if they're compliant under CAL, that doesn't mean they're bound by the dispute mechanism, which you have to be part of UNCLOS 4. CAL checks is wrong because they haven't answered the part of Salinas that explains that it would materially affect dispute resolution in the Black Sea. Seated at a table irrelevant. That's not our argument. They drop the framing of how Russia and China perceive UNCLOS. It's a series of costs, but believe that if they don't have to follow, if we don't have to follow those costs, then they don't have to either. Salinas saying Russia benefits now, even if Russia rationally benefits now, the Dodd evidence is from 2025 and says that the risk is still likely. Greenland kills hypocrisy. They have no reason that Russia cares about that, so there's not a reason that it matters. Black Sea no power is a reason to escalate because of motive. Drop probing means that it goes past red lines, so it's not intentional. China won't denounce. It's so old it doesn't assume the mining scenario because 1EC Valencia explains that China specifically cares most about mining, and if they believe they can mine outside of the convention like we're currently planning to do now, then they will denounce it, which triggers our impact. They said escalation. Yes, it's wrong. FONOPs make it inevitable because China is inevitably aggressed. This is Chinese state news, which we should reject it. The only warrant is that U.S. involvement is bad, but there's our evidence indicates that the U.S. is actively increasing involvement now, and our evidence is from March and theirs is from January. Now, they say Cato doesn't say war. Cato does say war. It says would increase competition, cause a global arms race. Read the card. It certainly says conflict. They say biodiversity, but we're not going for that. And they say no evidence says the executive order went through. Be real. Besides, when you see evidence says that it would happen. It's back. If the app is topical, it doesn't need to specify beyond the resolution. 1. Offense. Infinite number of things to specify collapses to 5-minute plans that obviate afground. 2. Defense. No shiftiness, because we can debate about words. There's no functional difference articulated in the 1C between different types of becoming party because all of them result in the same thing. Quote, our definition is first striking itself is not a definition because you lack a card saying this. Now the criticism. Framework. Competition should be based on the plan. Philosophical competition doesn't make sense because there's a scalar differential between link and the alt. They can challenge dominant ideologies through government action. It's unpredictable and unfair. There's no bright line. For constituting philosophy, we've endorsed terms of the plan and the alt in other instances. The 1EC was a critique of state alliance with the private sector. That's in the direction of their criticism. ISIS gross extraction is incorrect. If they ever do it, it'll be highly limited, which is why Trump wants to bypass it. That's Shaw and Chapter Body 25. The ISA Council reported deciding mining cannot proceed without regulation, legal recourse against an appeal because it would breach obligations to protect the environment. The NEG only gets domestic governmental fiat, fosters the socialist movement in the global south. There's no non-arbitrary implementation which wouldn't let them fiat Russia or China to zero every case answer ever. Contention counterplan. 1. Firm to both. 2. Hotlines. We do that. Passing 24. U.S. and China maintain direct link. The phone went unanswered despite efforts without party authorization. No one will answer. This is advice hearing must speak without ceasing to be a rule. 3. It won't work for Russia. Hennigan 23. Communication limited since Kremlin Middle 2016 elections. Congress passed provision NDAA restricts the ability to work for Russia. Military presence contradicts the ban FONOPs plank, which is the reason the conditionality is bad because it allows them to contradict themselves and get out of our offense. One condo solves their offense because it prevents contradictory planks. They say first strike would fail, it causes nuclear war, drop the player evidence, no quick war. Kirk 24. Buy some modern war games sponsored by military with a big 10 gig. In a few days, friendly worn out, new genre of fiction novels, placement on military reading lists, wars from great powers, World War I, and by Christmas only 4 years, 1 year, this water Japan fighting for years. This war repeats theme, wars Japan horizontally, China, Russia, and North Korea aligned at one. Japan, Philippines, Australia, and others fighting in multiple theaters. Mark the card at theaters. The covert fails because it's not known in China. First strikes that was loved by remediation, not going for it, and FONOPs in the public means it wouldn't be seen. It would be seen as happening eventually now. Okay, the counterplan. doesn't solve evidence 1 is the Hutchins 21. Chinese alleged U.S. entered territory waters 3 times to collect intelligence, part of its FON program. U.S. enters foreign seas, extent to which conducts espionage unknown. Allegations indicative of claims. If become party, the PERN, or actually, UCLOS allows espionage practices to espionage, not inconsistent with most of the rules. In the state of free, which is not exclusively prohibited, showing flag deploys enemies in passage of following opinion. These experts and advisors convention does not regulate intelligence. Article 19. Impact on U.S. intelligence. Answer is no. This is mostly this set. 1. Unique civil realms. They said China example of Arlington cooperation. 2. No break. Small text of practice sense that was introduced last year. 3. Impact takeout. They said adversarial attacks are increasing now. Getting worse with something that 04 threshold. Patrick says it takes a week, but the bill has been Congress for a year, so they can certainly wait. Oil is sad. The case that waived the electric the reason because nuclear was wrong scenario. They said the climate lawsuits are not enforceable, and the royalties link. They don't have a threshold for this, and yeah, cross-sex just zeros this. Like they can't get out of this. It doesn't matter because yeah.
Cool. What is the amount of time?
5.
Conditionality. Was that the only voting? Actually, it was kind of common voting issue.
Yeah.
And that was the only one. SAMOSA DA, you said uniqueness overwhelms, and then what were the other arguments? I'm just making sure.
You said uniqueness overwhelms. There's not a brink for the impact because the bill was introduced 1 year ago. We said that your impact evidence says adversarial attacks are increasing and been getting worse over years. We said that your link evidence doesn't actually say what you said it says. That's it.
That was it? Cool.
Yeah. Or I guess like theory arguments in terms of like reject the team, like we may reject the all, but that was not a drop in
That's
the
it.
question.
Right? Yeah.
issue. The SAMOSA DA, or politics DA. Actually, we are real good for the order first.
I am good.
Cool. The conditionality voting issue.
Sorry, so it's the contention counterplan, and then
Politics DA. The advantage counterplan. The case.
Harker. Yes. One stack. Wait. Or what? One stack. I need to go.
Cool. You're good? And you're good? Condo is good, we get what we did, one neg flex, speed of fairness, off gets plan choice, first and last word, advantage air, slight bias, infinite grab time, etc. Ground reaction. And the neg is to split their grab between egg or av, two argument innovation, debaters like to say. The comfortable strategies to win only condoms and divides and new counterplans that turns. And outweighs the lack of discussion on the same issue gets sales, so to try and adapt. Innovating new arguments, three critical thinking, force the winner to adapt and make strategic decisions, which is key. The education did not take this route, or I'm certain they didn't, but if they did, one neg flex, this would help them to use infinite practices propositions to argumentation, play of restricted disinfine devices. New position 3, it also is illogical, because there's no ground for what this position is. Also, condo is the most logical interpretation because the neg's only burden is reduced through the one issue. We can do that through any means. Air neg after 2 air and after choice exchange will see it through the offense, but the worst confirms enough soldier to confidence, but not be able to land to a warrant. That the one who did not have a drop to debate warrant at any point in it, which means you cannot do the drop us. They also said the only standard was contradictions. This is wrong. A is that if there was a contradiction, they could concede it and force a double turn like they did with the cap gate. And the oil gate proves that if there was any violation, that it was ruled off by continuing the double turn. SAMOSA's DA. Cyber attacks are coming now, attacks are on the rise, and adversaries smell blood in the water, so most stalls by eliminating inefficiency, builds resiliency to comply with vacuum that outweighs. In terms, the affirmative A is time frame. Cyber attacks cause immediate escalation, second strike capabilities to disrupt infrastructure, cause immediate chaos without player time frame first, intervening actors can solve their impact, but you can only die once. B turns case, and most as well as cyber browse, which deters evasionist attacks and solves conflicts. Cyber attacks also make escalation way more likely, which magnifies all half scenarios. 1R1. Another frame for all of these arguments is that none of them are substantiated by the card, even if they were all way too flippant. For you to bonus, I know Sterling is very good at giving tours. We need to hold him to what the 1R actually said. The fact that they were all analytic arguments means the DA cannot really get much lower than 100. I'll line all them here. 1R1 uniqueness cannot overwhelm you when you have not answered the link. The play they dropped the playoff fit last time because they lack of floor time on the bill, but the plan trades off of that. And also moves bipartisan backing because Republicans crash out. After Oompas is shoved down the throats, 1R2 no impact angle. Our last card says that attacks are increasing because adversaries perceived weakness, which is something that only the bill can resolve in the first place. 1R3, yes, link arguments is fantastic. And says everything I explained above. They also just conceded that the link would turn case they have dropped the Oompas is incredibly unpopular and would cause forced deliberation and floor time about other things, which means that it takes a long time for the bill to actually get passed. This was dropped out of the 1R. You should not allow neutral responses about beyond etc. because that should have been in the 1R instead of spending 5 seconds on a disadvantage. That 1R4, yes, it was implemented a year ago, but then it did not pass because of floor time, and it was reintroduced, which is our uniqueness card, which was introduced just a week or two ago, which is why it's going to get voted on food, no card. Once again, this is also just not a claim you can evaluate in a vacuum because they have not substantiated. Counterplan. Two frames of the advantage counterplan, first is judge cake. It's a logical extension of conditionality and logical maker, force of change from scope to scope was the most logical option, also just not contested. Second is sufficiency framing. As long as you solve enough of the case, you should presume we solve enough of the case. Now we're not. We're extending a few planes. I'll make it very clear. The first plane we're extending is the first plane is the first strike Russia and China plane. There's literally no card answers this. The card is about bias but do not engage substantively and also do not answer the second card. This resolves any risk of Russia or China because we have carded evidence that China bunker stuff and that Russia is not modernized. Our evidence is just about bias. And they just said no quick war and no, this is incorrect because our evidence makes a specific claim about how our counterforce is very targeted to us to develop new military capabilities, which means that if we launch a nuclear first strike, we eliminate all of Russia and China's nuclear weapons, which even if you think is silly, we have a carded justification as to why it's true and they have failed to provide a card that expressly disproves that. And the second point we're extending is the deterrence plank. They have dropped the IFE extended military deterrence in all of those regions. That would be sufficient to deter a China-Russia conflict because Russia and China are not stupid and they do not want to get towards the US when they know they'll get smacked, which means that it's not relevant in terms of joining UNCLOS to appease them. When you do this, straight up deter them. The last thing is that we are going to extend no using nukes plan. This means that it can never result in extinction, which they said is the standard, because if the US just covertly decides not to use nuclear weapons anymore, then it can never result in actual extinction or explanation of how you would get there, and no one have an explanation of how you get there in the first place. This would happen after the first link if you think they're contradictory, but beyond that, you can also just judge pick all of them because they're also not contradictory. Since they're not forced to double thing, they would just do different things. You choose these to answer each thing individually. Case page. I'll go for a few arguments here. First is the Todorov re-highlighting. They've conceded that CIL would already bound Russia and China as per provisions of customary law. This re-highlighting is fantastic. It is their evidence for the reason why Russia leaving would have an impact, and it agrees that in truth there is actually no impact to Russia leaving because all the notification of UNCLOS are codified in CIL, which means that would be sufficient to resolve. The second argument is that the job dispute resolution fails. The Nemeth evidence is fantastic and says that Nemeth and the Droz evidence are fantastic, and do an empirical study of UNCLOS and can say that it can conclude that UNCLOS has never actually been able to solve anything empirically because it just does not have any evidence that was sufficient. The last one we're going as the Salinas evidence is that Russia benefits from the treaty, which means that they are never going to leave. These re-highlightings are absolutely damning. On this portion of the debate, which means it should be game over for them being able to go for Russia, especially since their effect evidence is tentative at best. The next, the China scenario, wrong one, is the one to see Valencia evidence which says that it will be a serious cost for China to leave, which means they're never going to risk it. The more important thing is the one that do not have game on the impact defense. The Bell evidence is fantastic and says that escalation will never happen. Both Russia and the US and China do not have the will or capability to exist. She is way more focused about domestic issues at home, and Trump is an isolationist, both of which mean that they are never going to go to war. They've dropped the miscalculation as a bunk that has never ever actually happened in the real world, or will it ever really do, or will it happen in the future? Phone-up central link is wrong because they've dropped freedom and navigation. Happens in the status quo. All this is line that they failed to do, and the one that was pretty easy to flow sheets. That's how you know they were dropped. The last thing is the seabed mining A. They have conceded that there's no reason why the US is key, which means that external things like other countries would certainly solve it. Second is that their evidence on a single company, but they did not read evidence that this did not already happen. Also, just drop no bio impact, but also answers the Great Power War stuff because all the impacts of the Great Power War were answered by defense of the other countries.
Okay, I have 317 starting now.
Get some water.
is going to be the case, and then the counterplan and the DA.
Cool.
Are you good, sir? We're good. Okay.
Just get some.
We're good? All right.
This debate breaks down pretty simply when the tuner spent all of 7 seconds on the fastest, most probable impact of the debate. You know for certain Trump signed an executive order last Thursday, and you know they have no game on the Cato and avoid evidence. The difference between their arguments and ours is that while their evidence specifically outlines that cyber attacks have been happening for years and escalating in recent years, that our scenario has a clear and obvious brink related to adversarial backlash to unilateralism in mining. There's no reason the U.S.'s key is wrong because they didn't answer our arguments about how the U.S. is the only one violating the ISA on this specific issue. They said it's about one company, but there's just no implication of this because it's still sending the broader signal that the U.S. is willing to unilaterally mine, which is what Cato says is bad. They said that we have no evidence about this, it isn't related to biodiversity, but they dropped it leads to violent interactions independent of biodiversity and dupes all cooperation in the area, so the Pacific becomes a hellscape of clashing military forces attempting secure mining. But since the U.S. breaking the mining means everyone else will too, Cato not only says this, but Valencia affirms this thesis and says China specifically cares about this issue most, which means even if they don't leave UNCLOS, they won't comply with mining. Now, counterplan. Overview, don't judge kick individual planks. They're giving us an internal link to war and we should be able to answer it. You shouldn't judge kick each individual plank. How is it possible to answer it when they take out each other? If you do decide to judge kick at the end of the debate, you should take out the entire counterplan because this makes no sense. They've said do not use nuclear weapons and then they have said nuclear first strike. Regardless, we will answer the nuclear first strike component since it is the only thing that they have. Since the covert plank is only in context of China, which means, and the SCS at best, which means that they can't access our scenario. We have a card that's better than their evidence on this because it indicts the dominant thinking of the military. Notice how their evidence is from the military on this issue. It is very clear that there is this propaganda and overthinking. The current evidence is a meta-indict of this that says that the U.S. military has become too overconfident about it. It says, we marked it at the point where it says that China, Russia, and North Korea would work together in this scenario and that fighting would draw in multiple theaters, multiple actors in multiple theaters, but the risk that they would just use nuclear weapons in response is magnified by the fact that they have zero specific evidence about Russia or China's nuclear capacity, only a broader defense of the theory of counterforcing, which means that at best we're definitely winning the large portion of our scenario. Decide. The frame for one of our arguments is supposedly uncarded is that they're all logical indicts of 1C cards, and most of them were quoting those cards. Time frame is wrong. Look at their evidence. Only we have a scenario that actually says it's happening now, whereas they have impact evidence from a couple of years ago, and at best their terminal impact also isn't particularly good on this question. We're just gonna remind you of the arguments that we made about how it is. First, their clear evidence is from 5 years ago. Second, this argument about adversaries' perceived weakness, which was answered in the 1 year specifically, is very clear that attacks have been raising over the years. If you look at this evidence, it says that the number of attacks has surged in recent years. This was quoted in the 1 year, and they just have said that we don't have cards for this, but it does not matter when their cards do not agree with the arguments they are making. But the most damning argument that we are going for is a quote from their 4-time evidence. They have not answered it, so it would be interventionist to go against this. They have not answered our 4th argument about their Patrick evidence, which does indict the link, because Patrick says it takes a week for a 4-time. The bill has been in Congress for a year. Be real. They have not explained the articulation of 4-time. Look, but at the end of the day, only we have a brink. If time frame matters, only we have an actual time frame. Read that card, we indict it in the 1 year. Their responses don't make sense.
Good debate, my friend.